Hello, and thank you for joining Narrated Archives. I'm Sally Barron, and this is a podcast for the timeless reader. Each week, we narrate different stories that are no longer protected by copyright, making it free for all to hear. Today's selection is The Girl Who Went Right, written by Edna Ferber. Edna Ferber was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan in 1885. Her parents moved the family frequently during her childhood, first to Chicago and then to Ottumwa, Iowa, before finally settling in Appleton, Wisconsin when she was 12 years old. She was a novelist, short story writer, and playwright, widely acclaimed for her captivating stories of American life. Raised Jewish in the Midwest, she faced significant anti-Semitism, which fueled her keen eye for social injustice and her knack for exploring themes of identity and resilience in her work. Her illustrious career began in journalism, and by 1925, she won the Pulitzer Prize for her novel So Big. Ferber's literary legacy is marked by her creation of strong female protagonists and her vivid multi-generational sagas, including the classics Showboat and Giant. Many of her books were adapted into hit films and successful Broadway productions, some of which she co-wrote, like the play Stage Door. As a member of the legendary Algonquin Round Table, she became known for her sharp wit and outspoken nature. Ferber never married, dedicating herself entirely to her writing and cementing her place as one of the most celebrated and influential authors of the 20th century. This story, The Girl Who Went Right, follows a young, assertive, and resourceful girl trying to make her way in a new world of growing department store retail, fighting anti-Semitism with her intelligence. So, without further ado, The Girl Who Went Right. 4 weeks before the completion of the new 12-story edition, the store advertised for 200 experienced saleswomen. Rachel Willets, entering the superintendent's office after a wait of 3 hours, was applicant number 179. The superintendent did not look up as Rachel came in. He scribbled busily on a pad of paper at his desk, thus observing Rules 1 and 2 in the proper conduct of superintendents when interviewing applicants. Rachel Willets, standing by his desk, did not cough or wiggle or rustle her skirts or sag on one hip. A sense of her quiet penetrated the superintendent's subconsciousness. He glanced up hurriedly over his left shoulder, then he laid down his pencil and sat up slowly. His mind was working quickly enough, though. In the 12 seconds that intervened between the laying down of the pencil and the sitting up in his chair, he had hastily readjusted all his well-found preconceived ideas on the appearance of shopgirl applicants. Rachel Willets had the coloring and physique of a dairymaid. It was the sort of coloring that you associate in your mind with lush green fields and Jersey cows and village maids in Watteau frocks, balancing brimming pails aloft in the protecting curve of one rounded upraised arm, with perhaps a maypole dance or so in the background. Altogether, had the superintendent been given to figures of speech, he might have said that Rachel was as much out of place among the preceding 178 bloodless, hollow-chested, stoop-shouldered applicants as a sunflower would be in a patch of dank white fungi. He himself was one of those bleached men that you find on the office floor of department stores. Gray skin, gray eyes, graying hair, carefully gray clothes, seemingly as void of pigment as one of those sunless things you disclose when you turn over a board that has long lain on the moldy floor of a damp cellar. It was only when you looked closely that you noticed a fleck of golden brown in the cold gray of each eye, and a streak of warm brown forming an unquenchable forelock that the conquering gray had not been able to vanquish. It may have been a something within him corresponding to those outward bits of human coloring that tempted him to yield a queer impulse. He whipped from his breast pocket the gray-bordered handkerchief, reached up swiftly, and passed one white corner of it down the length of Rachel Willetsky's Killarney Rose left cheek. The rude path down which the handkerchief had traveled deepened to a red for a moment before both rose-pink cheeks bloomed into scarlet. The superintendent gazed rather ruefully from unblemished handkerchief to the cheek and back again.
"Why, it's real,"
he stammered. Rachel Willetsky smiled a good-natured little smile that had in it a dash of superiority.
"If I was putting it on," she said, "I hope I'd have sense enough to leave something to the imagination. This color out of a box would take a spiderweb veil to tone it down."
Not much more than a score of words, and yet, before the half were spoken, you were certain that Rachel Willetsky's knowledge of lush green fields and bucolic scenes was that gleaned from the condensed milk ads that glared down at one from billboards and streetcar chromos. Hers was the ghetto voice, harsh, metallic, yet fraught with the resonant music of tragedy.
Name?"
asked the gray superintendent. He knew that vocal quality. A queer look stole into Rachel Willetsky's face, a look of cunning and determination and shrewdness.
"Ray Willets," she replied composedly. "Double L."
"Clerked before, of course. Our advertisement stated—"
"Oh, yes," interrupted Ray Willets hastily, eagerly. "I can sell goods. My customers like me, and I don't get tired. I don't know why, but I don't." The superintendent glanced up again at the red that glowered higher with the girl's suppressed excitement. He took a printed slip from the little pile of paper that lay on his desk.
"Well, anyway, you're the first clerk I ever saw who had so much red blood that she could afford to use it for decorative purposes. Step into the next room, answer the questions on this card, and turn it in. You'll be notified."
Ray Willets took the searching, telltale blank that put on its questions so pertinently. "Where last employed?" it demanded. "Why did you leave? Do you live at home?" Ray Willets moved slowly away toward the door opposite. The superintendent reached forward to press the button that would summon applicant number 180. But before his finger touched it, Ray Willets turned and came back swiftly. She held the card out before his surprised eyes.
"I can't fill this out. If I do, I won't get the job. I work over at the Halsted Street Bazaar. You know, the cheap store. I lied and sent word I was sick so I could come over here this morning, and they dock you for time off whether you're sick or not."
The superintendent drummed impatiently with his fingers.
"I can't listen to all this. Haven't time. Fill out your blank, and if—"
All that latent dramatic force which is her heritage came to the girl's aid now.
"The blank. How can I say on a blank that I'm leaving because I want to be where real people are? What chance has a girl got over there on the west side? I'm different. I don't know why, but I am. Look at my face. Where should I get red cheeks from? From not having enough to eat half the time and sleeping 3 in a bed?"
She snatched off her shabby glove and held one hand out before the man's face.
"From where do I get such hands? Not from selling hardware over at 12th and Halsted. Look at it. Say, couldn't that hand sell silk and lace?"
Someone has said that to make fingers and wrists like those which Ray Willets held out for inspection, it is necessary to have had at least 5 generations of ancestors who have sat with their hands folded in their laps. Slender, tapering, sensitive hands they were, pink-tipped, temperamental. Wistful hands they were, speaking hands, an inheritance, perhaps, from some dreamer ancestor within the old-world ghetto, some long-haired, velvet-eyed student of the Talmud dwelling, within the Pale with its squalor and noise, and dreaming of unseen things beyond the confining gates, things rare and exquisite and fine.
"Ashamed of your folks?"
snapped the superintendent. No, but I want to be different. I am different. Give me a chance, will you? I'm honest, and I'll work, and I can sell goods. Try me." That all-pervading grayness seemed to have lifted from the man at the desk. The brown flecks in the eyes seemed to spread and engulf the surrounding colorlessness. His face, too, took on a glow that seemed to come from within. It was like the lifting of a thick gray mist on a foggy morning, so that the sun shines bright and clear for a brief moment before the damp curtain rolls down again and effaces it. He leaned forward in his chair, a weird half-smile on his face.
"I'll give you your chance," he said, "for 1 month. At the end of that time, I'll send for you. I'm not going to watch you. I'm not going to have you watched. Of course, your sales slips will show the office whether you're selling goods or not. If you're not, they'll discharge you, but that's routine. What do you want to sell?"
"What do I want to... Do you mean... Why, I want to sell the lacy things."
"The lacy..."
Ray, very red-cheeked, made the plunge. "The lingerie, you know, the things with ribbon and handwork and yards of real lace. I've seen 'em in the glass case in the French room. $79 marked down from $100. The superintendent scribbled on a card.
"Show this Monday morning. Miss Jevney is the head of your department. You will spend 2 hours a day in the store school of instruction for clerks. Here, you've forgotten your glove."
The gray look had settled down on him again as he reached out to press the desk button. Ray Willets passed out at the door opposite the one through which Rachel Willetsky had entered. Someone in the department nicknamed her Chubbs before she had spent half a day in the underwear and imported lingerie. At the store school she listened and learned. She learned how important were things of which Halsted Street took no cognizance. She learned to make out a sales slip as complicated as an engineering blueprint. She learned that a clerk must develop suavity and patience in the same degree as a customer waxes insulting, and that the spectrum colors do not exist in the costume of the girl behind the counter. For her, there are only black and white. These things she learned, and many more, and remembered them. For behind the rosy cheeks and the terrier bright eyes burned the indomitable desire to get on. And the finished embodiment of all of Ray Willets' desires and ambitions was daily before her eyes in the presence of Miss Jevney, head of lingerie and negligees. Of Miss Jevney, it might be said that she was real where Ray was artificial, and artificial where Ray was real. Everything that Miss Jevney wore was real. She was as modish as Ray was shabby, as slim as Ray was stocky, as artificially tinted and tinctured as Ray was naturally rosy-cheeked and buxom. It takes real money to buy clothes as real as those worn by Miss Jevney. The soft charmeuse in her graceful gown was real and miraculously draped. The cobweb lace collar that so delicately traced its pattern against the black background of her gown was real. So was the ripple of lace that cascaded down the front of her blouse. The straight, correct, hideous modern lines of her figure bespoke a real $18 corset. Realest of all, there reposed on Miss Jevney's bosom a bar pin of platinum and diamonds, very real diamonds, set in a severely plain but very real bar of precious platinum. So, if you accept Miss Jevney's changeless color, her artificial smile, her glittering hair, and her undulating head-of-the-department walk, you can see that everything about Miss Jevney was as real as money can make one. Miss Jevney, when she deigned to notice Ray Willets at all, called her "girl." Thus, "Girl, get down one of those number 17s for me, with the pink ribbons." Ray did not resent the tone. She thought about Miss Jevney as she worked. She thought about her at night, when she was washing and ironing her other shirtwaist for the next day's wear. In the Halsted Street Bazaar, the girls had been on terms of dreadful intimacy with those affairs in each other's lives which popularly are supposed to be private knowledge. They knew the sum which each earned per week, how much they turned in to help swell the family coffers, and how much they were allowed to keep for their own use. They knew each time a girl spent a quarter for a cheap sailor collar or a pair of near-silk stockings. Ray Willets, who wanted passionately to be different, whose hands so loved the touch of the lacy, silky garments that made up the lingerie and negligee departments, recognized the perfection of Miss Jevney's faultless realness, recognized it, appreciated it, envied it. It worried her, too. How did she do it? How did one go about attaining the same degree of realness? Meanwhile, she worked. She learned quickly. She took care always to be cheerful, interested, polite. After a short week's handling of lacy silken garments, she ceased to feel a shock when she saw Miss Jevney displaying a robe de nuit made up of white cloud and sea foam, and languidly assuring the customer that, of course, it wasn't to be expected that you could get a fine handmade lace at that price, only $27.50. Now, if she cared to look at something really fine, made entirely by hand, why... The end of the first 10 days found so much knowledge crammed into Ray Willets' clever, ambitious little head that the pink of her cheeks had deepened to carmine, as a child grows flushed and too bright-eyed when overstimulated and overtired. Miss Myrtle, the store beauty, strolled up to Ray, who was straightening a pile of corset covers and brassieres. Miss Myrtle was the store's star clerk and suit model. Tall, svelte, graceful, lovely in line and contour, she was remarkably like one of those exquisite imbeciles that Rossetti used to love to paint. Hers were great cow-like eyes, the wonderful oval face, the marvelous little nose, the perfect lips and chin. Miss Myrtle could don a $40 gown, parade it before a possible purchaser, and make it look like an imported model at $125. When Miss Myrtle opened those exquisite lips and spoke, you got a shock that hurt. She laid one cool, slim finger on Ray's ruddy cheek. "Sure enough," she drawled nasally. "Where'd you get it anyway, kid? You must have been brought up on peaches and cream and slept in a pink cloud somewheres." "Me?" laughed Ray, her deft fingers busy straightening a bow here, a ruffle of lace there. "Me? The L train runs so near my bed that if it was ever to get a notion to take a shortcut, it would slice off my legs to the knees." "Live at home?" Miss Myrtle's grasshopper mind never dwelt long on one subject. "Well, sure," replied Ray. "Do you think I had a flat up on the drive?" "I live at home, too," Miss Myrtle announced impressively. She was leaning indolently against the table. Her eyes followed the deft, quick movements of Ray's slender, capable hands. Miss Myrtle always leaned when there was anything to lean on. Involuntarily, she fell into melting poses. One shoulder always drooped slightly. One toe always trailed a bit like the picture on the cover of fashion magazines. One hand and arm always followed the line of her draperies, while the other was raised to a hip or breast or head. Ray's busy hands paused a moment. She looked up at the picturesque Myrtle.
"All the girls do, don't they?"
"Huh?" said Myrtle blankly.
"Live at home, I mean. The application blank says, say, you've got clever hands, ain't you?"
put in Miss Myrtle irreverently. She looked ruefully at her own short, stubby, unintelligent hands that so perfectly reflected her character in that marvelous way hands have.
"Mine are stupid looking. I'll bet you'll get on."
She sagged to the other hip with a weary gracefulness.
"I ain't got no brains,"
she complained.
"Where do they live then?"
persisted Ray.
"Who? Oh, I live at home,"
again virtuously.
"But I've got some heart if I am dumb. My folks couldn't get along without what I bring home every week. A lot of the girls have flats, but that don't last. Now, Jevney—"
"Yes?" said Ray eagerly. Her plump face, with its intelligent eyes, was all aglow. Miss Myrtle lowered her voice discreetly.
"Her folks don't know where she lives. They says she sends 'em money every month, but with the understanding that they don't try to come to see her. They live way over on the west side somewhere. She makes her buying trip to Europe every year, speaks French and everything. They say when she started to earn real money, she just cut loose from her folks. They was a drag on her, and she wanted to get to the top. Say, that pin's real, ain't it?" "Real? Well, I should say it is. Catch Jevney wearing anything that's phony. I saw her at the theater one night, dressed. Well, you'd have thought that birds of paradise were national pests, like English sparrows. Not that she looked loud, but that quiet, rich elegance, you know, that just smells of money. Say, but I'll bet she has her lonesome evenings."
Ray Willets' eyes darted across the long room and rested upon the shining, black-clad figure of Miss Jevney, moving about against the luxurious ivory and rose background of the French room. She left her folks. Huh. She mused aloud. Miss Myrtle, the brainless, regarded the tips of her shabby boots.
"What did it get her?"
she asked as though to herself.
"I know what it does to a girl, seeing and handling stuff that's made for millionaires. You get a taste for it yourself. Take it from me, it ain't the $6 girl that needs looking after. She's taken her little pay envelope home to her mother that's a widow, and it goes to buy milk for the kids. Sometimes I think the more you get, the more you want. Somebody ought to turn that vice inquiry on the tracks of that $30 a week girl in the Irish crochet waist and the diamond bar pin. She'd make swell readin'."
There fell a silence between the two, a silence of which neither was conscious. Both were thinking. Myrtle, disjointedly, purposelessly, all unconscious that her slow, untrained mind had groped for a great and vital truth and found it. Ray quickly, eagerly, connectedly, a new and daring resolve growing with lightning rapidity.
"There's another baby at our house," she said aloud suddenly. "It cries all night pretty near."
"Ain't they fierce?" laughed Myrtle.
"And yet, I don't know."
She fell silent again. Then, with the half sign with which we waken from daydreams, She moved away in response to the beckoning finger of a saleswoman in the evening coat section. 10 minutes later, her exquisite face rose above the soft folds of a black charmeuse coat that rippled away from her slender, supple body in lines that a sculptor dreams of and never achieves. Ray Willets finished straightening her counter. Trade was slow. She moved idly in the direction of the black-garbed figure that flitted about in the costly atmosphere of the French section. It must be a very special customer to claim Miss Jevney's expert services. Ray glanced in through the half-opened glass and ivory enameled doors. "Here, girl," called Miss Jevney. Ray paused and entered. Miss Jevney was frowning. "Miss Myrtle's busy. Just slip this on. Careful now. Keep your arms close to your head." She slipped a marvelously wrought garment over Ray's sleek head. Fluffy drifts of equally exquisite lingerie lay scattered about on chairs, over mirrors, across show tables. On one of the fragile little ivory and rose chairs, in the center of the costly little room, sat a large, blonde, perfumed woman who clanked and rustled and swished as she moved. Her eyes were white-lidded and heavy, but strangely bright. One ungloved hand was very white, too, but pudgy and covered so thickly with gems that your eye could get no clear picture of any single stone or setting. Ray, clad in the diaphanous folds of the robe de nuit that was so beautifully adorned, with delicate embroideries wrought by the patient, needle-scarred fingers of some silent, white-faced nun in a faraway convent, paced slowly up and down the short length of the room, that the critical eye of this coarse, unlettered creature might behold the wonders woven by this weary French nun, and, beholding, approve. "It ain't bad," spake the blonde woman grudgingly. "How much did you say?" "$95. Miss Jevney made answer smoothly. "I selected it myself when I was in France my last trip. A bargain." She slid the robe carefully over Ray's head. The frown came once more to her brow. She bent close to Ray's ear. "Your waist's ripped under the left arm. Disgraceful." The blonde woman moved and jangled a bit in her chair. "Well, I'll take it," she sighed. "Look at the color on that girl, and it's real, too." She rose heavily and came over to Ray, reached up and pinched her cheek appraisingly with perfumed thumb and forefinger. "That'll do, girl," said Miss Jevney sweetly. "Take this along and change these ribbons from blue to pink." Ray Willets bore the fairy garment away with her. She bore it tenderly, almost reverently. It was more than a garment. It represented, in her mind, a new standard of all that was beautiful and exquisite and desirable. 10 days before the formal opening of the new 12-story addition, there was issued from the superintendent's office an order that made a little flurry among the clerks in the sections devoted to women's dress. The new store, when thrown open, would mark an epoch in the retail dry goods business of the city, the order began. Thousands were to be spent on perishable decorations alone. The highest type of patronage was to be catered to. Therefore, the women in the lingerie, negligee, millinery, dress, suit, and corset sections were requested to wear during opening week a modest but modish black one-piece gown that would blend with the air of elegance which those departments were to maintain. Ray Willets of the lingerie and negligee sections read her order slip slowly. Then she reread it. Then she did a mental sum in simple arithmetic. A childish sum it was, yet before she got her answer, the solving of it had stamped on her face a certain hard, set, resolute look. The store management had chosen Wednesday to be the opening day. By 8:30 o'clock Wednesday morning, the French lingerie, millinery, and dress sections, with their women clerks garbed in the modest but modish black one-piece gowns, looked like a levee at Buckingham when the court is in mourning. But the ladies-in-waiting, grouped about here and there, fell back in respectful silence when there paced down the aisle the Queen Royal in person of Miss Jevney. There's a certain sort of black gown that is more startling and daring than scarlet. Miss Jevney's was that style. Fast black, you might term it. Miss Jevney was aware of the flurry and flutter that followed her majestic progress down the aisle to her own section. She knew that each eye was caught in the little dog-eared train that slipped and slunk and wiggled along the ground, thence up to the soft drapery caught so cunningly just below the knee, up higher to the marvelously simple sash that swayed with each step, to the soft folds of black against which rested the very real diamond and platinum pin bar, up to the lace at her throat, and then stopping, blinking and staring again, gaze fixedly at the string of pearls that lay about her throat, pearls of rosy pink, mistily gray. An aura of self-satisfaction enveloping her, Miss Jevney disappeared behind the rose-garland portals of the new cream and mauve French section. And there the aura vanished, quivering, for standing before one of the plate-glass cases and patting into place with deft fingers the satin bow of a hand-wrought chemise was Ray Willets in her shiny little black serge skirt and the braver of her 2 white shirtwaists. Miss Jevney quickened her pace. Ray turned. Her bright brown eyes grew brighter at sight of Miss Jevney's wondrous black. Miss Jevney, her train wound around her feet like an actress's photograph, lifted her eyebrows to an unbelievable height. "Explain that costume," she said. "Costume?" repeated Ray, fencing. Miss Jevney's thin lips grew thinner. "You understood that women in this department were to wear black one-piece gowns this week?" Ray smiled a little twisted smile. "Yes, I understood." "Then what?" Ray's little smile grew a trifle more uncertain. "I had the money. Last week. I was going to, but the baby took sick. The heat, I guess, coming so sudden. We had the doctor and medicine. Say, your own folks come before black one-piece dresses." Miss Jevney's cold eyes saw the careful patch under Ray's left arm where a few days before the torn place had won her a reproof. It was the last straw. "You can't stay in this department in that rig." "Who says so?" snapped Ray with a flash of Halsted Street bravado. "If my customers want a peek at Paquin, I'll send 'em to you." "I'll show you who says so," retorted Miss Jevney, quite losing sight of the queen business. The stately form of the floor manager was visible among the glass showcases beyond. Miss Jevney sought him agitatedly. All the little sagging lines about her mouth showed up sharply, defying years of careful massage. The floor manager bent his stately head and listened. Then, led by Miss Jevney, he approached Ray Willets, whose deft fingers, trembling a very little now, were pretending to adjust the perfect pink satin bow. The manager touched her on the arm, not unkindly. "Report for work in the kitchen utensils, 5th floor," he said. Then, at the sight of the girl's face, "We can't have one disobeying orders, you know. The rest of the clerks would raise a row in no time." Down in the kitchen utensils and household goods, there was no rule demanding modest but modish one-piece gowns. In the kitchenware, one could don black sateen sleevelets to protect one's clean white waist without breaking the department's tenets of fashion. You could even pin a handkerchief across the front of your waist if your job was that of dusting the graniteware. At first, Ray's delicate fingers, accustomed to the touch of soft, sheer white stuff, and ribbon and lace and silk, shrank from the contact with meat grinders and aluminum stew pans and egg beaters and waffle irons and pie tins. She handled them contemptuously. She sold them listlessly. After weeks of expatiating to customers on the beauties and excellencies of gossamer lingerie, she found it difficult to work up enthusiasm over the virtues of dishpans and spice boxes. By noon, she was less resentful. By 2 o'clock, she was saying to a fellow clerk, "Well, anyway, in this section, you don't have to tell a woman how graceful and charming she's going to look while she's working the washing machine." She was a born saleswoman. In spite of herself, she became interested in the buying problems of the practical and plain-visaged housewives who patronized this section. By 3 o'clock, she was looking thoughtful and contented. Then came the summons. The lingerie section was swamped. Report to Miss Jevney at once. Almost regretfully, Ray gave her customer over to an idle clerk and sought out Miss Jevney. Some of that lady's statuesqueness was gone. The bar pin on her bosom rose and fell rapidly. She espied Ray and met her halfway. In her hand she carried a soft black something, which she thrust at Ray. "Here, put that on in one of the fitting rooms. Be quick about it. It's your size. The department swamped. Hurry now." Ray took from Miss Jevney the black silk gown, modest but modish. There was no joy in Ray's face. 10 minutes later, she emerged in the limp and clinging little frock that toned down her color and made her plumpness seem but rounded charm. The big store will talk for many a day of that afternoon and the 3 afternoons that followed, until Sunday brought pause to the thousands of feet beating a ceaseless tattoo up and down the thronged aisles. On the Monday following, thousands swarmed down upon the store again, but not in such overwhelming numbers. There were breathing spaces. It was during one of these that Miss Myrtle, the beauty, found time for a brief moment's chat with Ray Willets. Ray was straightening her counter again. She had a passion for order. Myrtle eyed her wearily. Her slender shoulders had carried an endless number of variety of garments during those 4 days, and her feet had paced weary miles that those garments might the better be displayed. "Black's grand on you," observed Myrtle. "Tones you down." She glanced sharply at the gown. "Looks just like one of our $18 models. Copy it?" "No," Ray said, still straightening petticoats and corset covers. Myrtle reached out a weary, graceful arm and touched one of the lacy piles adorned with cunning bows of pink and blue to catch the shopping eye. "Ain't that sweet?" she exclaimed. "I'm crazy about that shadow lace. It's swell under voile. I wonder if I could take one of them home to copy it." Ray glanced up. "Oh, that," she said contemptuously. "That's just a cheap skirt. Only $12.50. Machine-made lace, imitation embroidery." She stopped. She stared a moment at Myrtle, with the fixed and wide-eyed gaze of one who does not see. "What'd I just say to you?" "Huh?" ejaculated Myrtle, mystified. "What'd I just say?" repeated Ray. Myrtle laughed, half understanding. "You said that was a cheap junk skirt at only $12.50 with machine lace and imitation." But Ray Willets did not wait to hear the rest. She was off down the aisle toward the elevator marked Employees. The superintendent's office was on the 9th floor. She stopped there. The gray superintendent was writing at his desk. He did not look up as Ray entered, thus observing rules 1 and 2 in the proper conduct of superintendents when interviewing employees. Ray Willets, standing by his desk, did not cough or wiggle or rustle her skirts or sag on one hip. A consciousness of her quiet penetrated the superintendent's mind. He glanced up hurriedly over his left shoulder. Then he laid down his pencil and sat up slowly.
"Oh, it's you,"
he said. "Yes, it's me," replied Ray Willets simply. "I've been here a month today."
"Oh, yes."
He ran his fingers through his hair so that the brown forelock stood away from the gray.
"You've lost some of your roses,"
he said, and tapped his cheek.
"What's the trouble?"
"I guess it's the dress," explained Ray, and glanced down at the folds of her gown. She hesitated a moment awkwardly. "You said you'd send for me at the end of the month. You didn't."
"That's right,"
said the gray superintendent.
"I was pretty sure I hadn't made a mistake. I can gauge applicants pretty fairly. Let's see, you're in the lingerie, aren't you?"
"Yes." Then, with a rush, "That's what I want to talk to you about. I've changed my mind. I don't want to stay in the lingeries. I'd like to be transferred to the kitchen utensils and household goods."
"Transferred? Well, I'll see what I can do. What was that name now? I forget."
A queer look stole into Ray Willets' face. A look of determination and shrewdness. "Name?" she said. "My name is Rachel Willetsky." The Girl Who Went Right was published in the Saturday Evening Post on August 16, 1913. It's a wonderful thing to be able to connect with stories from so long ago and to see how they still resonate with us today. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. It truly helps other listeners find the show, and I would love to hear your thoughts on today's story. You can share your comments and submit your own requests for future public domain treasures by emailing me at sbnarration@sallybaronvoiceovers.com. I can't wait to share another story with you next week. Thanks for listening.